Started. Oh, the mic is on. Well, okay. Hi, Zoomers. Welcome. We're going to call this meeting to order. It's Monday, October 2nd, 2023. Welcome to all of you. We're going to start out tonight with a visitor. His name is William, and I think he goes by Billy Crocker, and he's with Alliant Insurance, and he's going to present an update on upcoming property insurance renewal options for Harbour. And he's with Common Property Insurance. Well, he's with Alliant, and it's about common property insurance renewal. So we'll turn it over to Billy. Thank you so much for being here.
You bet. Happy to be here, and thank you all for having me. I've got a few slides that kind of illustrate, where we're at in the process. We became engaged as your broker back at the end of June. On June 29th, we were appointed after a decision with the board to allow Alliant to represent the Harbour Association as we go into the December property insurance renewal, and then actually having just recently completed the general liability and marina liability renewal in mid-June. So now that the transition has taken place in these last few months in understanding all of the risk profile of the association and the property and all the insurance needs, we have begun that process of marketing. And I don't know if I have the ability to share a screen here, Scott, but maybe helpful just to kind of, there we go, thank you. Look through just a few slides that I have put together for today's meeting. And the first of which is just sort of our overall goals. I thought I'd just start here as far as what we had committed as part of getting engaged as your new partner with respect to the insurance. And really this was around a lot of concerns about the process and how the insurance is obtained, and just really, wanting a high confidence level that one, the best terms and pricing were accomplished, but also kind of 1A, I would say, are there ways that we can look at structuring and placing the insurance program that will allow for some savings, because insurance has become incredibly expensive. Deductibles have risen over the last 2 to 3 years. It's become pretty widespread. Wall Street Journal just came out with an article talking about the insurance marketplace. And so in dealing with all of that, and specifically dealing, with all of that in a coastal area, which certainly commands even higher rates than you would see inland, we really wanted to deliver that confidence about the process. And so I thought I would just sort of speak to that a little bit here in bullet points, and then open it up for some questions about where we are. But first was our commitment. I wanted to just go over that and reiterate that we have done a comprehensive review of the state of the union, of where you all are currently at, the current insurance markets. We are looking right now at considering alternative program structures, and those I'll go into here by coverage line. You've got your property insurance, and then you've got your liability. So we have some ideas about how to look at some alternative structures there, and then evaluate potentially. And this bullet point here has a big part of what these alternatives will entail is potentially some compromises that the association can make decisions to make in order to maximize where the insurance companies are flexible on their terms. And if that translates to some price savings, then we'd want the board to be able to make that decision, and in hopes of getting a little bit better bottom line. As far as the companies that we are looking at for the property component, to start there, because the property insurance, this is your wind and fire and hurricanes, and the actual real assets, the property and the risk of loss there constitutes the largest portion of the spend, probably not surprisingly, for the entire insurance program. And so we look at that first, and we've gone to 34 insurance companies. Those companies have been engaged with the submission of all of the things and the components and underwriting data that we put together on your behalf. And with the help of the board and the management company, we've done that. These are some of the headwinds that we face: your coastal wind exposures, total loss scenarios. And then we also face probably our biggest headwind, capacity. You know, the insurance marketplace is dealing with an inventory crisis, just like many other industries. And so we want Bal Harbour to be looked at as a favorable risk to allocate that precious limited capacity to at a very aggressive price. And so the big part of what we go through is, you know, appealing to the insurance companies' limited capacity by potential, as I said, structural aspects of the program with limits. For example, you know, do we take the full insurance of the portfolio for losses related to fire, but maybe have some limitations on hurricane? You all are already facing a pretty high, I wouldn't call it a limitation, I would say a retention in the form of a deductible on the hurricane. It's a $250,000 deductible. So, you know, the association is already faced with absorbing that type of deductible in the case of a hurricane. And so, you know, can we look at minimizing that, but potentially coming down on total insurance available for a certain event? And is that a better way to look at it? So all of these are things that we're looking at on the property, and that 34 will likely be narrowed down to, I would say, less than 10 over the next 30 days. And at that point, you know, we'll really be able to get some meaningful feedback to deliver to you all at sort of the 30-day out point for the renewal date. And then just quickly moving on to general liability, same exercise, a considerably more limited marketplace with regards to liability, and that is due to the marina exposure. What we're trying to do here is take 4 policies and consolidate them to 3 and eliminate some additional umbrella liability that sits over essentially 2 towers of liability insurance, one for the marina exposures and one for the HOA. We want to look at combining those, and we have found a few carriers that are open to doing that. So eliminating a policy always translates into savings, apples to apples. You know, we'll look at this in conjunction with the property renewal in December, even though the liability has renewed back in June. This is something that we're looking at presenting as a full rewrite. And if that turns out to be a good option, then we're going to recommend it. If not, we are, as I said, engaged with the current incumbent liability markets and can continue to service those until June, which may present another opportunity to roll everything together on a common date. But again, the next 30 days will tell us that as we get feedback from the marketplace. And so lastly, I'll just give you that timeline. Here's where we were formally appointed as the broker on June 29th. We've collected the data. We've placed the submission out into the markets for the underwriters to review. We provided sort of this update to the board on the 13th. And, you know, as I said, the 17th goal I'm kind of doing now because we have this format, and I apologize for not being able to be there. I'm playing a little hurt today, but you know, this essentially serves as kind of the status, and really between the 17th and then 30 days out on November 17th, I believe there's another board meeting in this format, and I'm planning on attending that to give you really that condensed version of what carriers are interested, where the pricing indications are, what type of structures are going to suit us best. And that will guide us into ultimately December 1, which is the day that we'll be formally proposing the recommended program for the December 17th renewal on property and hopefully liability as well. So any questions, I'll open it up.
Yeah, Billy, I have a question. Oh.
Billy, I have a question for you. You mentioned, unless I misunderstood earlier, you said, you didn't say it was on there, that the market is seeing about a 20% increase over the previous year. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. It is. And until we have more of the feedback over the next 30 days leading up to that first week in November, I would still stand by that because right now, we're looking at a renewal of the same structure. So assuming same structure, meaning the same amount of limits bought, the same to similar causes of loss being insured, and the same deductibles, that's where that budgeting guidance came from. Yes.
Okay, thanks. If it's 20%, we just went from 90,000 to 155, if I'm not mistaken, in our projected 2024 expenses. That's 50%. Is there, what is the reason for that? Why are we so high compared to the market? And am I correct? 155. 155.
Yes. So you're actually, that's in line really with the entire marketplace, and that's with specific to catastrophic prone areas, which is where your community is characterized in, and where the marketplace, treats it from a appetite. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Not being there, it's hard for me to read the room. My bad. But I'm was just saying that the reasons behind that are availability of insurance. It's a supply and demand issue first. Secondly, the last 3 years we have seen many catastrophic losses that have affected, from a claim standpoint, the entire insurance marketplace at a multi-billion-dollar level. We also have a lot of capital exiting the marketplace, which is the investors in insurance companies do not see it as the same profitable type of arena. So they're pulling money out. So the insurance companies are feeling a squeeze in the sense of solvency and need to be able to honor that in that regard. And then reinsurance, I would say, is kind of the third leg of the contributions to a hardening market and rate strengthening. Reinsurance becomes more and more expensive. And when we have the inland events like wildfire, freeze that we had in Central Texas, Maui had fires, sort of the non-predictive type events where, we know a hurricane, we've seen historical data. It's the hail and the fires and the unpredicted losses that have been affecting the market over the last few years. Really, it's shrunken the interest level down and the appetite for the market. And so where the insureds have felt it the most have been in areas that are catastrophic prone driven, meaning earthquakes in California and hurricanes along the coast. And so you're taking an already limited marketplace and shrinking it down even more. And so when I provide budget guidance, I look at all of those factors. I look at what kind of interest we're seeing on a quarterly basis. I look at what the reinsurance costs are doing. And then we look at overall in the entire risk profile, including liability. Some of those carriers are also insuring liability related losses. And so you bring into the heavy litigation, nuclear verdicts, distracted driving, social. So, all of those components add to rate strengthening, but the real core of the answer to your question is just supply and demand is extremely limited. Reinsurance is going up and we are not seeing any stabilization. So it's important for us to prepare our clients accordingly. And also from a apples to apples to what you're doing now, that's where those compromises are going to come into play on making some decisions as to where to scale back or absorb more risk in order to get, a lower bottom line.
One other question, I'll let someone else have the mic. We had talked, and I think Barbara had mentioned to you also, that a possibility of us self-insuring ourselves on windstorm in the marina and just using liability. Every boat owner has $300,000 liability. And as you mentioned, we've got $250,000 deductible, which is outrageous. Could you break that down? We would have to vote on that. This is not something the board could just do. But could you break those down in the estimate and do one with and one without, or will the insurance companies do that?
We absolutely have that exact format that we're marketing in tandem with the just sort of as expiring, I'll call it, renewal. And yes, we will have a breakout, and we can actually extrapolate where the wind rating will be as a component of the overall premium. But we also are mindful of your exact point, which is, are there obligations of the association with regards to what needs to be purchased from a cause of loss standpoint that we need to meet? And aside from a vote, do we have governing documents dictating our program structure? And if so, what's involved with amending those to be able to get some more affordable insurance from being able to even make those decisions in that regard? So we are looking at that, and that will come as part of our November proposal, as I said.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
I guess so.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've heard the Zoom. Oh, well,
So I saw in one spot, there's a $250,000 deductible. If we do not have in our bank $250,000 worth of deductibles, we have a cut, we money, and we have a catastrophic event. Is it my understanding that the insurance companies will not give us a dime until we put forth the $250,000?
The first part of the adjustment process involves essentially an actual cash value advance. So in the circumstances that I've seen where there hasn't been enough reserves to fund for the deductible, the insurance companies still, every situation is different, but I have not seen a situation in 18 years where with handling quite a few losses, unfortunately, where the first distribution of claim proceeds didn't go out. However, that is the time where they look at where the deductible is and then reimbursing for the withheld depreciated amount of a claim, subject to the deductible being met. So most of I would say not. It would be very shocking if there wasn't a dime paid out in the initial parts of the process. And it may be something where an assessment needs to be made. There are situations that warrant time on behalf of the insurance company given to their insureds to be able to put that kind of funds together. But that would be what I would likely see, is an initial distribution at actual cash value, and then all other proceeds of the claim probably withheld until the deductible can be funded.
Just one follow-up. If the insurance companies do put forth money in the absence of our reserve, is there additional fees that we incur because we don't have sufficient reserves?
From Alliance standpoint, no. From the insurance company standpoint, I do not see anything on the insurance policy that gives them authority to charge additional fees on top of that. I think where you would look at potential soft cost implications like that may be in the contractors or the loans, other areas where that are involved in the claim. I've seen costs rise for delays in funding that. You don't have any lease agreements where you have tenants needing to get back in. So, I wouldn't add that component, but just purely from the carrier and the agency, I've never seen a fee be charged, and there's nothing on the policy that indicates that they have the ability to do that or what that would be.
Anybody else have any questions? No? Thank you. Okay, no problem. That's why he's here.
Off base from where we are today, a little associated, but if it was an ideal world, would we have been better served to have had a blanket policy for all of our structure instead of individual? Because we at least had more leverage to, or is the overall cost so overwhelming that insurance companies would walk away from us?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when you refer to blanket, I take that to mean that all of the structures and the associated values of all the things that need to be insured are combined together under one single limit of insurance that every potentially damaged structure would have the ability to tap into. Yeah, that is the ideal scenario in a perfect world. And I would say that the biggest reason today, as we sit here, why that's ideal is because of some of those limitations that I've mentioned that you know the insurance carriers are willing to give. We could have an overall blanket limit, but you know only buy wind up to a certain amount. So where you have a combination of a fully insured large bucket of limit where all structures are at 100% replacement cost, but you don't have you're not purchasing insurance for a total loss scenario, an apocalyptic scenario where you would use that entire limit. We have to be very careful in looking at limitations like that and the various probable maximum loss scenarios. And we have tools to figure that out. But just purely from a negotiating with the carrier standpoint, it's not as much leverage as it used to be to have blanket, but it's more they can be flexible on where we buy insurance within that large blanket limit. There is one sort of caveat: is blanket limit commercially available these days? Many carriers aren't even allowing blanket limits. Or if they do, they're placing what's called margin clauses, which is, only giving you you're essentially taking back the whole concept of blanket limit and saying, okay, well, the Windermere Mansion can only have access to 10% above the stated limit of that instead of having access to the whole bucket. So that's a tough, coverage to be able to negotiate into a policy these days. It's not impossible, but it does afford us some areas where we can, operate within an overlying blanket, and it also affords us the ability to waive co-insurance and remove the ability of the insurance company to attach any penalty for what could potentially be an underinsured scenario at the time of the loss. And Barbara and I visited a little bit about this over the last week, in the concerns that, taking a co-insurance penalty, while we are confident that the values that we're insuring are adequate, who knows what the cost will be to repair something at the time of a loss, especially a catastrophic event where you have demand surge, availability of building materials, supply costs going up. So, blanket also doesn't just afford a large bucket and some potential flexibility to insure within that bucket, but it also gives us the assurances that we're going to get every dollar at a claim time, and not face any potential underinsurance that the carrier adjusts to. So ideal world, absolutely. It's something we always go out with in our submissions asking for in the initial submission. But what we don't want to do is limit the marketplace that's already limited by having some auto declinations because a carrier can't actually afford that type. So we'll do everything we can to have blanket, yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Hold on. I think I'm going to pass the mic to Barbara.
This is just a clarification from the question that was asked and what you answered, Billy. When you were talking about blanket policy, are you talking about including all of the individual homes that are here? And that's what he said, correct. Is that what you were referring to, Billy? That would be 237 homes being included as well as common properties.
No, I'm not. Thank you for clarifying that. The insurable interest of the association.
So I just want to be sure.
Yeah, I meant the common and general elements that are the responsibility of the association, and all the aspects of the marina itself as well. Anything that is under the responsibility to insure the association and not anything within the interior walls, thank you for that, Barbara.
Right. So this is clearly a work in progress, and then we will plan to revisit next month November, Billy? And
Correct, yes.
members? All right, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate the information. Before we let him go, is there any more questions?
Oh, he's gone.
Oh, oh, no, there he is. All right. No more questions? And what did you want to add, Scott?
Tell him to get better.
Yes, we hope you feel better soon.
Thank you.
Can you hear?
Appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. COVID's no fun. All right, take care. We will
Yeah,
plan to
thank
see
you.
you live next month.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Mark had a question.
10 years ago, we did have home insurance. 10 years ago.
Right. Did everybody hear that? Mark has said many years ago, we did have homeowners insurance under our maintenance fees, but that stopped many years ago because it got too expensive and or unavailable. Are you guys familiar?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think, and then some of that stopped with the flood, because a lot of homeowners were upset and felt that they couldn't choose their own company, so it turned into such a, you know.
Right. They felt forced to go with the same
I
policy.
decided, just.
Right, right. Do we have any more questions just among members regarding insurance, or should we move on? All right, we'll move on. Okay, so the next order is to approve minutes from September 11th, 2023 from that Board of Directors meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
I motion we approve the minutes.
Second? All right, Ralph, before you go up first, the second, any discussion? Nope. All right, so approved. And so next we have general comments from the board. Do we have any general comments? No, none tonight. All right, so we'll next move to homeowners comments that are items that are not on the agenda. Keith,
Hey,
let me bring you this.
I'm acting in proxy tonight for a bunch of people that weren't able to be here. So I've got a list, so just bear with me. What metrics have the board set in place to measure performance of all of our employees? And do they have semi-annual reviews? It's question number one. I'll be glad to give you these notes when I get done, so you can have. Anybody want to comment on that, or?
So go ahead and give all the questions and then we'll answer.
There's a whole list.
How many?
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
So would you repeat the question?
Sure. What metrics have the board set in place to measure performance of all of our employees? Do they have semi-annual reviews?
No. Based on their performance. And we think that their performance has been good.
How do you measure that?
Measure that based. Acceptance and agreement.
Okay. Have you sent out a customer satisfaction survey to homeowners? If no, why not?
Nothing never had it come up, and that's why we have come.
Okay. Do you know the demographics of our community?
Specifically,
Yes.
I'm sure Jordan has a pretty good idea because she does all of this, but just the word itself, we address that specifically.
Yeah,
Because I
to the
know
board.
that we are a very diverse community.
How many would you say are retired that live in our community? I know you're not required, but I think people are curious.
No, I just said it.
Sure.
Much information about Our people can we provide?
Well,
Is there a privacy?
the city would have that, information.
Okay,
And I've heard it before from the city manager. Right. And that's where you need to get it from.
Okay.
Okay.
all right, their next question is, what RFPs have been sent out for 2024? And has anybody responded yet for those RFPs? And can we see them? Since you guys just put the budget together.
Right, well, the budget will be approved tonight. Or we expect that it will be approved tonight.
But have you guys sent out RFPs for any transactions over $50,000? Okay. And then request for proposal? Yeah. Next question is, what is the plan for setting up committees? Definition, board members assigned, release of liability for members.
Yes, there is gonna be actually a legal process that will include our attorney in order to institute, incorporate, and there's been a long process that we've already begun. Our Secretary Jan Mullen has spent a good amount of time on that, and we will continue to make strides to make sure that the committees that are formed are not only legal, but that they're productive, helpful, and that all liability and insurance is covered.
Okay.
We institute
Next question is there a work order list? People want to see what the weekly work orders are, the man hours used, internal and external, and total cost to Bal Harbour. Is that possible to be put on the G drive?
I think it could be a work in progress. We bring maybe for that, we know more than anybody. Never had it that fast, but
I mean, some can both be put together and it can be done once the time is coming to do it.
Sure.
It's not an easy request, it's a great request. But give you an example of something that could be done. In Excel, for example, you could have a one-line row. And this could be a request that a owner would provide to Rick or Joy. They would have this, they wouldn't have to enter anything, but it would have just a few, probably 10 pieces of data would be all you need to identify where, when, categorize it so that it could be placed into a database. It could say when it was requested, when it was done, and you could have, I don't know if you necessarily want to put how many hours that specific job is, but you could categorize for a specific task.
I think people want to know because there's no delineation in salaries. When you look under the codes for the P&L, I think they want to know what is hourly labor and what is internal labor and what the cost was.
But we could.
I think people just want to see, like,
It's easy, but
yeah.
we could come up with something that a person puts in as a request. All Joy would have to do is copy and paste it
Sure.
into this database.
I think this person
and
was
then
asking,
Data would be available.
I think this person was asking because with everybody wanting to increase rates, they want to see where the money's going to. And there's nothing in hard writing or in any documents that says where the money's going. And I think that's what they were requesting.
Joy's got a hard job. You have receipts.
right.
You can put that code from that initial request onto the hard copy of the scanned document, and it'll all be searchable.
Okay, and I appreciate that comment. I think in answer, and Scott clarified with me that in the process of committees, we have discussed a potential portal, which I think was your
Yes.
idea a while back.
Yeah.
So that is all part of the negotiational process protocol of us developing these, and it may be part of that matter at a place, the move blocks, that would be part of that job.
Yeah.
Part of that job of that committee.
Okay, good. Next question. It actually kind of goes with the committee that goes around and looks. They want to know who's enforcing the rules or the bylaws here. Now, like, I'm gonna give you an example. We've got a vehicle that's parked over on private property of Bell Harbor. That's from a neighbor that doesn't belong to Bell Harbor, that's been there for almost 6 weeks on and off. And nobody has stopped this person from parking their vehicle there. The other is, we paid 2022 $16,000 for a harbor master, but yet we still have people speeding up and down the canals, and there's no enforcement. There was one that happened yesterday. The guy literally revved up when he got to Barb and Jim's house and took off. And if we're paying for a harbor master, I think they want to know why there's no enforcement. Because what we've been told is that Rick was a harbor master. We had a problem, we should contact the police. We've contacted the police. They come out and say, hey, we can't enforce anything because we didn't see it.
Let me ask you the question. You can't. Your first comment-
The first comment is a car that's parked over in right off of Sandy Cove. There's like 4 or 5 parking spots next to. Absolutely. They live across the street in a separate home that's not a part of our association. It's a blue Bronco. Yeah.
We don't necessarily. You tell them, we try to do something about
But we don't have any like stickers or a piece of paper from Bell Harbor office saying, hey, this is a guest, right? We don't have that capability, I don't
it.
think.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, how is somebody that's supposed to have a friend come and visit, get one of these pieces of paper on the weekend or?
This, I meant that it was a sticker for if somebody's illegally parking somewhere, I do have a sticker that I put on the front.
The residents who call in, that's the only way Rick and Joy are gonna know if there's a problem, is if homeowners call in. So I know there was a problem on my street, we called in, we called the police, we actually said the car is chronically there, it doesn't belong there, and they dealt with it. But I think the same thing goes, and I've heard with other matters, and I hear what you're saying, but Rick and Joy don't know things unless it's brought to their attention. So if it was a matter that wasn't addressed, that went on for a long period of time, you're not gonna know to address it. So I would think it would be important that we do.
And that's how they, hearing this, you don't mind, cop car. 24 hours is over 24 hours is violation.
But Hank, when we called Hank didn't know that is not one of our members. And it's hard for me to go because there's nobody there. No, there's nobody. When I called Hank and told him that this guy is not part of our association, he goes, I anything. It's on our parking spots that are at the very end of, it's on Lazy Lake Road.
I've heard that you don't, those speaking back and forth, question, how is parking?
Well, you know, the funny thing is, when we talked about this a year and a half ago, I offered to share my video from my cameras, which it uses AI and it shows you every time a boat goes in and out. You can see the speed. I offer that information up to Rick if he wanted to review it. And he goes, I'm not going to sit here and watch videos all day long. So, I mean, how do you address that? Because we have no wake signs everywhere, but nobody listens to them.
Right, I'll look at it.
Okay,
Okay,
I'll share them with you.
yeah, and all you have, I don't know anything about them, I don't know, because you said you can tell the speed of it.
You can see the wake. I mean, we're concerned about our bulkheads, but you can see the wake just banging the crap out of them, you know? Yeah.
But, so are these other homeowners that are?
Yes, these are all homeowners. Yeah.
Somewhere tonight, we get together and.
I've got your email. I'll send it to you. I'll share the link with you.
Okay.
How's that?
Yeah, I think that.
Okay. There's one last question.
I'll
What?
just sit down.
Sure.
I can say something about.
Okay.
Sure.
Can we please listen to Janice?
Rick knows very well about the 4 parking spaces. He has helped us all the time when we notify him about vehicles that are parked on those spaces, because it's directly across from where I live. It is extremely annoying, and I have not been home in almost 4 months. So I haven't been aware of that vehicle, or I guarantee you, I would have notified Rick a long time ago. And it's an ongoing problem. People who live on Sandy Cove, they don't have adequate parking when they have kids home from college or somebody that's living with them, but that's not our problem down there. But I can tell you, it's been a problem for 25 years with those 4 parking places. And Rick knows, he hears from us, and he has put orange stickers in the face of the person who's driving. And like I said, I would have already noticed that if I was living there right now. But the thing is that it's an ongoing problem. We want the extra places, but it's usually homeowners who abuse it all the time.
I mean, if it's been 25 years, why haven't we come up with a solution yet? That's the question I have.
It's
Like,
very hard to come up with a solution because there are signs that says yes, parking only.
right.
And, you know, Rick has tried to help us with that. And it's sad because it's usually homeowners that are abusing it. And would they want cars parked always in front of their house? And we even had someone that, we found out that it was a car that didn't even have a right to be on the street, and they hauled it off.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of situations, but we also don't want to restrict when we have a guest that they have nowhere to park. So it is an ongoing problem, and it does say, you know, guest only, and maybe we should lease this a little better, because there's one guy that lives, I don't know if he's the owner or if he's a child of the person, an adult child, but he abuses it all the time, and he comes with a different vehicle. And, you know, Rick has gone down there to talk to him, but you have some people that just won't listen. And that's a real problem. And when we know how to take care of that, that'll be amazing.
Yeah. All right, one last question. This is from Jeff and Nicole. They want to know why we don't have no trespassing signs on the property. Is that something that can be addressed?
Do you mean for homeowners, like,
Well,
press-
people
or
just
just,
show up and go fishing over
Yeah.
by their house, that's what they're concerned with.
I have absolutely seen that, and I know it is an issue. Does anybody else want to answer to that?
That can be taken care of as far as if you ask them to leave and they won't leave, then you can call a police officer, and probably somebody as far as that's on the board, the president or vice president, if they give the cop the authority to haul them off, they can. But most of the time people will leave if you say this is private property.
Actually, if it's when we called the police on the 4th of July 2 years ago, we had people from Swan Lagoon come over and take over our boardwalk. We called the police because they got into a fight. They got 2 small children that were right on the edge. We were concerned that the kids were going to go into the water. We could get sued if they drowned. The police said, well, it's not posted, no trespassing here. So I brought this up 2 summers ago. This is something that needs to be addressed. And I think Jeff and Nicole bring up a very good point, because it's happening again.
Right.
You know, even our lawn people will go and fish off of our bulkheads. If they fall into the water or something happens, are we liable?
So
I guess is their question.
the big question, sorry.
The big question, if you could do a little bit of research, is I know that there's a water law that says if you have access to the water, you can't stop people from going to the water. But since we're a private community and Bell Harbor, can we put up no trespass? You don't have to answer now, but
We can put up private property, no trespass, and that sounds like what we need to do. You know what I mean? Just order signs, because we have done that. We used to have problems with the tennis courts up there. I mean, we'd have, in the same situation, people go up there and smoke weed or whatever, because
Right.
it's sort of quiet at night. So, and so we finally, you know, I had to post signs up there, if you notice up there, like on the observation deck, it says private property, keep off. So it sounds like strategically in a few areas, we need to invest in some private property signs and find out exactly again what needs to be put on it, and we'll post them.
Oh, we charge them to fish.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Legally, we have to have a sign.
Right.
$10.
I agree. Yeah, Dee says maybe we should charge them to fish there, which is funny. Not practical, but that is funny.
We could also, last time we started, we had some, very limited parking. We had a sign that said towaway zone, and we had a contract.
In League City with a towing company, and they just come take the car away if it was there for a certain period of time.
We talked about that before, but it's, some people know your towing companies are pretty nasty. And a lot of vehicles get towed that really should not have been towed. So we've always decided not to get a contract with a towing company, because they'll just drive the neighborhood trying to find something to tow off to make some money.
Okay, so I have the questions so that we can keep them top of mind, and they'll be in the minutes for sure. Okay, are there any more homeowner comments that were items that weren't on the agenda?
Yes.
All right, let me bring it
I
up.
invited a guy to talk with us.
And he had to leave. No, okay.
And he just quickly wants to go over, he's got a fundraiser of a paddle on the 21st for Camp Hope. And it's it goes from here all the way over to the lagoon and over to the other place in Nassau Bay. And it's an event, and people have signed up from here, but he wanted to just quickly give you something on that. Okay?
One, it's a tourism event for the city, so I'm thankful that the city's helping me promote this and using city funds to promote it. And all the money goes directly to Camp Hope, which is a faith-based organization up in Houston, where veterans go and live up to a year at a time. The suicide rate is incredibly high. So the other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make it the QR code on there. All the money goes straight to Camp Hope. David Black back here is part of the team. David business owner here in Nassau is looking at our money and all that stuff. But we're not going to touch any money. Our little group, everything goes straight to Camp Hope. Great organization, and the veterans don't get charged anything. The difference between Camp Hope and the VA doesn't allow faith in the program. And so a lot of these guys, they'll speak at this event we'll have at the Nassau Bay Marina after the kayak event, and they'll talk about how that faith has helped them get over their thoughts of suicide. Any question?
Strictly paddle.
Oh, no, paddle. Or you can swim. I don't care. You can paddle.
Whatever you use to paddle.
I think it's about a 2-hour trip. I think it's only about 5 miles. It's not very far. So we go straight over around the corner here by Bell Harbor, go right to Howard Ward Park. There's a ramp there owned by the Nassau Bay HOA. Go around the corner, around the peninsula, the Nassau Bay Wildlife Peninsula, and then go through on the left-hand side is their homes in League City, and it's the League City Nature Center. So it's a very pretty view. And then we'll go up to Cobb Bayou and have a event up there.
It ends in Nassau Bay.
Nassau Bay Yacht Club.
So it's close to 270, right?
No.
Yeah, isn't that?
Well, yes, actually, it's, if you take a look at Nassau Bay, it's a peninsula city. So there's a little bridge there right across the street. So we'll go up and touch the bridge and come back. Yeah, go to the yacht.
Did you get the QR? Yeah, there's a QR on it.
Do you have more of these or?
Or you can actually just scan it and go online, and it tells you all the information about it.
Yeah.
Straight, weather permitting or just?
Well, no, weather, obviously, but it's a safety issue. So the backup date will be 1 week later.
Okay.
And we'll start over by the Hilton. and then cruise around here and then get people to sign up already, so it should be good. It's a really worthy cause.
Super, super thing. Yeah, we love Camp Hope and have supported him. My husband's a big, big supporter. Thank you.
Sorry,
We're working on the details right now. Nick's gonna help, and they're on the Hilton property.
on the hill. Okay, I've heard of it.
They're working on it.
We're working on it. It's work in process. We only got 3 weeks to go. What the heck?
Yeah.
He'll get working.
No. It's all gonna be in city of Nassau Bay. This is the Nassau Bay city of Medina.
Yeah, okay.
So if you look at it, Nassau Bay's got two peninsulas. One is the city of Nassau Bay is a peninsula.
Yeah.
And then there's a peninsula inside the peninsula.
Great. So you better.
Great. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. All right. Yes, sir.
This is probably my ignorance. Is there a place where we can send questions or suggestions to you? Because I don't want to like take up a meeting. If you could be collecting information and addressing.
We have a box outside where a lot of people drop, or you could email Joy to valharborjoy@gmail. Yeah. Or you could send an email to me too. No problem.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have contact. Thank you.
Yeah. Did I overlook anybody? No? All right. So we'll move on to the association managers report. That would be Rick. You're up.
Homeowners with arrears of 90 days or more, 0. Marina arrears, $578. That's one marina member. Hopefully, we'll be getting money from him soon. WRSC arrears, 0. That's good. Other than that, we were working originally on catching up with some concrete problems, settling, cracking. We started on that, and then we had the big rain come along, and that created a lot of leaks, several leaks. And I've seen it through the years. When you go several days and months with hot weather and no rain, the flash and things like that incorporate with the roofs, shift and move around. And after that hard first initial gully washer, and then that second one, we've got about 2 more leaks to get caught up on that. Let's see what else and then also we went so long without rain, a lot of gutters, with dried leaves in, plugged up. That adds to water problems. And we do have a lot of wells inside units over garages and even up on roofs and in atriums that get plugged up. And when we don't have these little rains that indicate, oh, I have a problem there, all of a sudden, boom, you have a gully washer and it floods. So we're better off having rains off and on all summer long. When we don't have them for months, it creates really quite big problems. But other than that, that's my report.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, so next up are committee reports. We'll start out with architecture, which is K, and I'll bring you you want to come up here? Sure. You can put it on that paper.
All righty. Excuse me, the first request is from 18019 Bell Harbor Drive. And the request is to replace the existing back and side wooden fence that encloses the backyard. Yeah, that one. Okay. And the new fence will have a 12-inch wide rot board placed horizontally. And then the vertical wood fencing will be installed on top of that. And the total height will be 9 feet. The existing wood gate will be taken off and cleaned, power washed, and replaced in the same place. So basically, based on our guidelines and such, the architectural committee recommends approval as approved, as submitted.
Do you have questions about that or anything? Okay. Oh, one thing I forgot to say is the lattice that is currently there at the top will not be replaced. Gone. Gone.
Approved as it's submitted. Is there a second? More discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. All right. Yeah.
And the second request is from 18050 Lakeside Lane. And it is a request to replace a non-functional attic fan on the roof. And the board has a picture. Many of us have those. It looks like an upside down mushroom. Okay. At any rate, they'd like to replace it with a 30-watt solar fan. And the homeowner also included a picture of that. And the part that you will see on the roof is 14 by 14 inches. It's a flat solar, but it will be 9 inches in height from the roof. So I looked, well, the committee and I went over, it's not visible from the street. For one thing, it's more or less on the back. And, we felt like it would follow the guidelines. We looked at the solar guidelines for something that small, roof top like that, not so big. So for those reasons, the committee thought that it should be approved as submitted. So do you have questions about that?
I have a question. I'll ask that. It's different.
Oh,
It's.
So no discussion on that board? Okay.
yes.
They were talking about flashing and replacing and moving.
There's several of them put on, people have put them on, added them. When somebody put something in like that and it's causes a leak, they'll have to repair it themselves.
Right.
And anybody that does that and wants us just to jump up and look at it after they have them installed, we'll do that also.
Have they been made aware that is a fact, that they would be
Yes.
responsible? And
Yes.
in writing?
It is. It's right there on the application when you submit it. It says you will be responsible for any upkeep.
Heard that, but I did not see that one.
And I guess the other thing is, it's in the back. You think neighbors behind there would look at it and be object to it or no?
I can't see where it would be any worse than what's there now, but
And there is several in the neighborhood.
yes,
It's 9.
That's actually.
it's 9. Yeah, raised up from the roof, and the actual head of it, it's about 14 inches from what this says. And it's supposed to be whisper quiet.
Okay,
So
any more discussion?
No objection.
Motion to approve as submitted.
Motion to approve.
Second? Matt? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes as submitted.
Real quick is, does anyone have one of these in their attic and do they work? Does it make a difference?
I had one before, it worked great.
Does it keep the top floor cooler?
Yeah, what it does is normally when you collect all that hot air, it normally acts as a envelope, you can cool air inside, but when you do put the attic in, you take the envelope out, the solar powered ones, more power, but do the same thing. So you will see a little bit of a difference. You'll see that it doesn't retain the cool inside the house as well as not having. So just personal opinion, but
Okay,
they work great, they're quiet.
thanks.
Thank you, Kay. We appreciate that. We appreciate you. All right, so we'll move on to finance report. And Rolf, we'll discuss the budget for the fiscal year. I'm gonna grab my paperwork here, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, this month's report from the profit and loss budget performance for the 10th month ending August 31st. The gross income for these 10 months is about $12,300 over the budgeted amount. The total expenses about $46,000 more than budgeted. We did spend more than budgeted in insurance, total maintenance and material. With $12,300 more revenues than budgeted and $46,000 more expenses than budgeted, we have a deficit of about $33,800, less than budgeted for this month. On the balance sheet, we have $131,000 in contingency funds, replacement funds for the current and future year expenses of $287,000. 1 month ago, this balance was $263,000. 1 year ago, it was $525,000. Again, with a double-digit cost increase in material, labor, and insurance, I'm not going to go through the need to have additional funds to proceed with what we have to do. Anyway, on January 1st, 2023, the maintenance fee of $463 was computed utilizing the CPI of the immediately preceding October of 2022. The HOA management prepares the annual budget for 2024. The Finance Committee reviews and discusses proposed budget for 2024, incorporating the maintenance fee of $463. The Finance Committee recommends that the board approve it effective November 1st. You want to vote on it?
Yeah, do I hear a motion to approve this budget?
Approve. I can motion.
Do I have a second? Dan? All those in favor? All those.
Yeah, please. Well, if Ralph, you've heard my comments.
Will you stand up and use the mic? I'm sorry, that it's good for Zoom, but I can hear you.
I was part of the finance committee, so this is not new for Rolf, but I believe that the current budget does not have enough money in it to cover an audit. And our last audit that we had was in 2013. Our bylaws require us to have an audit. It also, I've looked in it today, and the property code also talks about an audit. I think it's something that should be included, and I request that it be there. And I'm only one vote, but I just feel it needs to be on the record that I think we should do that. I also think that we should have had money in there to do a professional update on the reserve study. Rolf did an awful lot of work on it. We learned an awful lot over the last 4 months, but there's more to be learned, and it should be solidified, I think, by a professional audit. Both of those things would change the budget. However, I also think, and I've said this before many times, the amount that we have in the O&M budget, I did a review of my own, and the difference between the O&M that Rick came up with and what I came up with is between $10,000 or $20,000. It's not a big number. However, I think that we should have spent more time going through the detail of that and found places that we could have modified those numbers so that we had more money to put towards an audit and the reserve study. I think that those should be included. Like I said, it's my opinion, but I thought y'all should know about it.
Barbara, would you please mention how much those items would
Oh.
cost, go to the reserve study as well as the
Yeah,
audit?
I put an additional $10,000 in to cover because we have money in the budget for reserve, for a review. But it would take probably at least another $10,000, we think, and that's a guesstimate. I don't have anything from a professional CPA firm, but we think that that would probably cover it. On the reserve study, to do a 1-year reserve study would be 12,500. They have a package where you can do one that they also do a follow-up the second year. And for that, you get a benefit because it's only $15,000. It's still a lot of money. But they do 2 years essentially for, the second year kind of comes along gratis. But I think they're important items and they should be considered. It does have an impact on our spending, but I think we can save some money in some other areas. And but it will still impact the bottom line, which also impacts what we're doing as far as the reserves and capital improvements. Any- Pardon? No, well, I adjusted the total for right now. Our budget is 18,700 for legal and CPA and audit and tax. And I increased that to 33,000. That would replace the review. You wouldn't do a review. You would only do an audit. I put it. They had 66,000 in for the attorney. I put 63. The CPA has 2,400 in there. I put 2,520. Tax and audit was in there for 10,3. I'm sorry, I've got 25 in there and I've got 15,700 for the reserve study. That totals in lieu of 18,700, it totals $33,820. I don't know.
And then can I have one other question while it's both y'all spoken? There's word about a grant that we applied for Bell Harbour. Is that correct?
Yes, there is word. There is a discussion with the city mayor and the cities they have their the fund and they do from the hotel business has approved $100,000 specifically to help the marina get back in business.
Is that a clean grant where it's completely clean? There's
there is nothing, no conditions, nothing like that. It's just to help. Nothing at all. No conditions and not requested, not asked and not offered.
Is there any possibility for
Okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to comment, it's actually confusing because Councilmember James Abbey was looking into the possibility of a grant. Who would write that grant? I don't know anything about it. All I know is that's a totally separate thing.
From the 100,000.
Yes, a totally separate thing. Yes. Oh, sorry.
And he's trying to help us by seeing if there is anything we can partner with the general land office. Those projects are long-term projects. Long-term projects sometimes happen, sometimes don't. So he is working very hard on that, and we just wait and see. And it's not gonna be this month, it's not gonna be next month. Yeah.
Thank you. I was just wondering how much discretion the board has in, like if there's savings in one category of the budget in doing the business of the year, are you able to move? How much discretion does the board have to move funds from one category to another?
The budget can be amended anytime by the board. And if there are items that we need to reconsider that we have not, or selected to postpone a little bit, it will be reconsidered whenever. We were just trying to get a budget out with a very short use time we had after the voting. And where it will be changed, yes, it's gonna always have change, and we'll be able to shift money from here and there if the board agrees on it.
I just wanted to make mention in regards to Barbara's statement about the board, the finance committee, specifically discussing the audit and the reserve study. There was a more or less a tabling of that. There wasn't a disagreement or a refusal to do one. There was more or less a decision to be made to wait, that we weren't prepared to spend that amount of money right now, that we were going to look to cut cost. And that was going to be our first job, was to see ways that we could actually save money. And then ultimately we would do those studies. There wasn't anybody on that finance committee at that meeting that said it should not be done or that we refuse to do it in any way, stretch, or form. And I want that to go in minutes. All right.
The reserve study was volunteer.
The one that we had done was done by Rove, and then Barbara followed up, and then Rick worked on the finance report. They all worked together. And then those numbers were given to Scott, and then Scott actually formulated his entire presentation based on those numbers and the amount of research that you did to prepare. Is that correct? Okay. All right.
Oops. I'm just going to add one comment. As far as the audit goes, Lori's right. We discussed it, but it was not included in the budget. My feeling is we have a requirement to have either an audit or the review done so that it can be presented at the annual meeting in May. If it's not scheduled now, we're not going to get it done. And I'm sorry, I feel strongly about that, that it's something that we should include. I understand the reserve study is another expense, and we might have to put that off later in the year when we see whether we can come up with the funds, but I think an audit is critical.
Barbara, what was the last audit done?
2013.
Because the CPA, when we do the audit.
Only a CPA can do that.
Well, how about if we have one that lives here, maybe could volunteer their time?
I don't. Yeah, there's
volunteered 2
Well,
months for the reserve.
Well, we did, but the requirements on an audit are very specific with the law that governs, who can do an audit, how it has to be done. It's a very lengthy and legal procedure that they have to
And
follow.
we do have a CPA that does a review every year and then monthly reviews all our financing.
Right. All right. Any more discussion on that? I think we still need to see about a vote, so. All those opposed? Okay, so Barbara is opposed. And so the budget is passed for 2024. Thank you, Ro, for all your time and your work and your many, many, many hours spent on this. All right, so we're going to move on to yacht, and that would be Matt. Here we go.
Okay. Okay, so we had 0 new leases and we had 0 moving out. So we stayed the same, except that we made more money somehow. I'm not sure, but the rates increased. Okay, so all right. And so we were at 121.9% of the budget for the month. And that's all there is to that, unless there's any questions.
What's the vacancy rate right now?
About 2/3. And just to remind everybody, back in May when we talked about it, I called around to 6 other marinas just to see if that's a common occurrence, but it is not. They are like up high 90s. So it's particular problem with our marina. Well, okay, yeah, there is the primary reason. I don't know if there is such thing as a primary reason, but there's a number of things. It's the draft is it's not that deep for some boats. It doesn't have floating docks. There's a number of the condition of it. One person was looking at it, that's the brother of somebody on the council, and because we didn't have a lift available and he wanted a lift, things like that.
So it's not like a pricing street.
No, it's
The last 30 years, it was them reasons. The marina's shallow, we're vulnerable during a hurricane, and it's everything else we thought.
A big distance away from.
Yeah, distance away from the bay. But if this was 10 foot deep and we had a channel to the thing, it'd be full of sailboats right now.
Do we charge electricity for people to use our electricity?
no.
You could probably save quite a bit a month because they're putting their air conditioners on and their bilge pumps are on 24.
But their air conditioners are not supposed to run.
Unless they're on the boat.
But they do. And go on to
Yep.
the requirement for meters.
The cost for the meters would be very high, but
Let them do it.
We don't know about occupancy rate either.
Is that what? Really?
Are there actually any questions, or do you want to just talk between yourselves? Okay.
One other thing I mentioned is the flyer that Tracy put together.
Yes.
The Val Harbor Marina flyer, which is very nice. We're gonna try to promote it. We just have to figure out how to promote it. And I think the use, well, it's up now because it's summertime, correct? The occupancy rate increases and then just normally fall off in the fall and winter.
I don't know that. All I know. I'm sorry, Rick. Not really. No, all I know is that it's been consistently decreasing over the last 10 years. Ratcheting down. And so that's what I do know.
So how many slips do we actually have in the marina right here?
133.
133.
Okay, and how many of those are designated for a homeowner?
Designated or being used by.
Designated.
However.
However,
Any homeowners want to use it.
Well, I mean, everybody's
the-
supposed to be able to have a slip.
right.
Not if they don't have a boat.
But if you own a home, you're supposed to be able to have a slip.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I'm on the canal. I'm just asking.
They don't get assigned a slip until they have a boat because we don't know what size slips with.
Yeah, but if.
But
Do
right
we
now
have
we have
over
25.
237 slips? I guess is my question. Do we have over 237 slips?
Between the canal and the marinas, yes.
How many more? About 237.
We got 133 and what?
I can't remember offhand.
Yeah, just kinda curious.
It's not a whole, it's not a large number.
It's just a handful.
It's a handful over the 237.
Okay.
From what I remember, it was like somewhere between 5 and 10 slips that are in the marina that are above the actual number of houses if everybody wanted one. Something really close to single digits.
You're just looking at it now.
Right.
Yeah.
For us to provide 237 slips, there's not very many extra left in the marina.
Did that answer your question, or do you have a point to the question, or just wanted to know?
No, I'm just curious.
Okay.
I was interested to see how many actually we had.
Okay. Any other question?
No, I think we're good. Thank you, Matt. And don't take mine.
I know, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Thank you. All right, so we're at House and Grounds, but we have no requests unless they were late, Brenda. All right, so we have tennis report, Rose. Oh, here you go.
On the tennis, not much to report. We have 5 pool members that quit this month, which probably the normal for this time of the year using a pool. On the other side, on the other hand, trying to promote the pickleball, a lot of people asking when and how, so trying to get that started somehow. We're having a hard time doing that. Is on October 13 to 15, that weekend, we will set up the nets and they will be available the whole weekend for people or group to go on their own and start playing, or invite your neighbors or friends, and just to get a feel what's going on. Hopefully we build up some momentum and try to allocate more exclusive time for pickleball on those courts. That's all I have. There will be flyers and will be sent to you flyers on the table.
There's also the sign up if anybody is interested in pickleball signups. They're in the back on the table. Okay, so social committee, Dave, do you want to talk about tomorrow? Thank you.
Tomorrow is Neighbors Night Out. We've had this, I think, 4 years in a row, 3 or 4 years in a row. It's really good turnout. We are going to supply utensils and napkins and water and mixed drinks and maybe some snacks. If you want adult drinks, bring them, bring your own. And that's all that's required. If you want to bring a snack or some sort of an appetizer, that would be cool. So the only thing is really that's required is just bring yourself and a good attitude. Thank you.
Set up and tear down.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, set up and tear down. I think we've got the setup taken care of and the tear down. Thanks. It's not going to be very long to do that. Also, the gentleman just left with the race, a race or whatever it's called from here to the marina. Yeah, I would be interested. I'm going to do that, and I'd be interested if anybody wanted to join in a Bal Harbour team with their kayak or sailboard or whatever, let me know. It'd be kind of fun, really. And in the future, not much. We're having the New Year's Eve get together again. That was really successful. And it's really a nice thing to stay out of the madness on all the bar hopping and stuff like that and walk home. So we do plan on having that. That's all from the social committee. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've always done an orphans Thanksgiving because we really don't have a lot of family. And so we were thinking about doing a potluck here for anybody that's orphaned for Thanksgiving. So there'll be flyers and whatnot coming out, and we'll just set up a spread.
Okay, so next is on to old business. Do we have any old business that we need to discuss? Any new business? Think,
I know I'm on the agenda for the new business.
okay.
Billy touched on this. It has come up in discussions because of the large deductible we have on the property coverage for the buildings and the marina being the 250. The question has been asked, can we self-insure for that? I did a little research. The state of Texas does not have any particular laws that govern it one way or the other. California does, naturally, I think, because it's California. But it's only an option if we would have to go through to all the homeowners and have a vote on it. It comes with a lot of risk. And if y'all want to just think about it, in the meantime, I don't think anything's going to be happening right now. We can't do anything about the premiums for this year. It's going to go into effect whatever we do. It would be something we could look at early in next year to try and plan for the following year. But it's a lot of money. And I've talked with Rick. I said, if we had a major wipeout out there and we had to replace everything, we're talking about $1.7 million. So that's a lot of money to have to try and self-insure. Step down from that is maybe in the $600,000 to $200,000, depending on the extent of a storm and damage. So just since that question came up, I just wanted to cover it so everybody knows we have talked about it a little bit and we're willing to listen to any kind of input anybody has on it. So that's it.
Okay, so thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that. And thank you for the work that you've done with Billy and all your time in the insurance. So, all right. So I think that's about it for us, unless there's something that we haven't covered. One last chance before we adjourn. So we'll adjourn this meeting. It looks like it's about 7:30. Yeah, so you guys have a good evening. Thank you so much for coming here and have a good night.